Welcome to the Bevo Buckets podcast on the Burn Orange Sports Network. I'm Will Iger here with Ryan Hopper and Seth Berger, and every Tuesday we're here on the Burn Orange Sports Network to talk some Texas basketball from around 30 minutes to 40 minutes. We'll also discuss some of the best and biggest storylines in college basketball as the season goes on. Gentlemen, another busy week for Texas basketball, and unfortunate 1-1 week. It's almost 2-0. But how are you guys doing?
Doing well, Will. Excited to be back on the pod. We'll get to the LSU win in a second. Resounding win. The boys looked like a tournament team. They competed in Oxford. Maybe what they all the commentators say on TV is really true. Maybe these Rodney Terry teams do come along come February and March. We'll see, I guess.
Always a pleasure to join you, fellas. An interesting week. We'll obviously get into it. LSU win, massive. Anytime, I don't care where they're slotted in the conference, you can win on the road by 30 plus. That's a huge deal. A tough one with our old friend Chris Beard. Two very different games, two very interesting games, and then two more really interesting games that could determine the Longhorns' fate come March, whether that's seeding or in or out. A lot to break down here.
Yeah, unfortunately, fellas, we are going to start with recapping the loss against Texas's old friend Chris Beard and his old Miss Rebels, and it was a tale as old as time for this Texas Longhorn basketball team this season. The Rebels, they defeated the Longhorns last Wednesday 72-69. I thought the Horns were in this game from start to finish and were in the driver's seat for the majority of the game, actually, even down the stretch when they went down. Trey Johnson got two great looks, in my opinion. One, the floater on the right side of the court, down one. And then somehow, some way, they found him in the corner with a little bit of space, at least, for a three-point attempt that just could not fall down. But anyways, back to the main point in hand. Texas, I thought, dominated Ole Miss in the first half, yet they only led by four at the end of the half, similar to Texas A&M's first half start in College Station, excuse me, not in Austin. And their defense held the Horns to just 31 points in the second half. Sometimes you see this Texas offense and their guards struggle to even get in sets as Ole Miss's guards picked up Larry and Pope right as they crossed the half court line. And in Chris Beard's, I guess, revenge game, and the Rebels were in dire need of a victory. They got the job done. Ryan, overall thoughts on the loss to Ole Miss?
I mean, like you said, it it was atypical in that they did get some looks at the end. It wasn't strictly just ISO ball. That shot could have gone in. Um, I thought that they competed defensively. I thought that, Chris Beard teams, known fundamentals, hustle, and defense. And it almost felt like Rodney Terry and them thought we got to beat them at their own game. And they nearly did. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the losses this year. And granted, you guys had confession time last week. You guys you guys left the A&M game. I didn't see too much of this game. I got dragged to trivia night. So that's not my confession. But from what I saw, and I did see the last 4 minutes, and then, bits and pieces as I would look over at the TV, not bad. Like compared to some of the losses they've had this year, where you're like, oh my gosh, the fundamentals let them down. It didn't feel like that as much.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not one to tout a moral victory, but if there ever was one, I think this is one that Texas can hang their hat on. You see them starting to become a little bit more of a consistent unit, picking up wins. Obviously, the A&M comeback was massive, and then they go on the road against a really good team that's hungry for a win that had been coming off three losses, and you nearly do it. Like Will said, Texas was definitely the better team in the first half. Ryan, I know your guy, Devin Pryor, he was really impressive in the time he played. He played about 15, 20 minutes. But I was impressed with what he brought. He just brings a shot of energy off the bench, which is really important for this team, especially without Kendall Weaver. And Trey Johnson made big shots per usual. And this team just a little bit short. Like we talked about, Ole Miss was not a big team. Texas out rebounded them 42 to 33, which was nice to see, especially doing so on the road. And especially when your 3-point ball is not falling. The Texas only shot 22.7% from three, went 5 of 22. So that's tough to pull off a win on the road when you're not hitting your three balls. But, the big difference to me was the turnover discrepancy. Texas had seven more turnovers, and then the free throws. That was to me the biggest thing. Texas, while they shot a better clip at the line, Ole Miss shot an extra 11 free throws, 25 free throws total to Texas's 14, which felt like the game there. And watching the game, you wish Arthur hits that shot, that free throw at the end to tie it, and obviously change the scenario. We foul 72-69. Trey gets a couple looks from three at the end. Can't get him to fall. Bummed out, but it was a good back and forth basketball game, quality basketball game.
Yeah, and you look at this Ole Miss team, a team that's 10-2 at home. Very tough place to win there in Oxford. Their two losses have been an A&M, and as you remember in that one is Manny Obaseki, who hit that insane three-pointer that put A&M ahead with around, 14, 15 seconds left. And then their other loss at home was to Auburn. So very tough place to win up there in Oxford. And then on top of that, Seth and Ryan, as you mentioned, they were coming off three straight losses. And yes, Texas needs as many wins as they can get on this year, but Ole Miss does as well. And especially they did on Wednesday night. It was a valiant effort from this Texas squad. I would agree with you guys on that point, specifically from a defensive standpoint. It seemed like Texas, for the majority of the game, was able to shut down pretty much the rest of Ole Miss's starting guards. I mean, Matthew Morrell, he only had 3 points. Jalen Murray had 5 points. Padula got going, and obviously Brakefield off the bench. The lefty, he had a lot of success there in the paint. He got Shedrick in foul trouble a little bit with 4, and then Big Z in foul trouble. He also had 4 fouls on the night. Seth, you mentioned the free throw discrepancy and the turnover discrepancy. That's going to win you games. And on top of that, Texas just couldn't get their shots to fall. Arthur Kaluma was the second player on this Longhorns team who scored in double figures with 12. Johnson had 22, and Johnson had 22, but it was a tough 22. He didn't shoot very well from the field, but more importantly, he got to the line. And if he can get to the line, that is crucial for Longhorns' success this season. Because I'm fine with the Trey Johnson 22-point game when he's not shooting great from the outside, but he's still able to get to the free throw line and get opportunities there. So any kind of signs for hope after this Ole Miss game? I know you guys were talking about a lot, but definitely a lot of good things to take away from this victory or from this loss. Sorry.
Well, and I will say, quickly from an Ole Miss standpoint, I mean, if Texas had pulled this out, this could have been the beginning of a real slide for the Rebels. As we talked about last week, they had 3 straight losses coming into this one, all pretty close, all against ranked opponents after they had a statement victory in Tuscaloosa and they beat Alabama. But had they not beaten Texas, they lost to Auburn this weekend. No shame in that. Auburn looks like head and shoulders above pretty much anyone else in the country. But then, Rebels got to go to Kentucky. Or no, they had Kentucky at home tonight. That could have been a really bad, granted against tough opponents, a really bad 6-game slide for them. So, like you said, Seth, I'm not a huge moral victories guy. There's a time and a place for them. And I think this may be one of the times and places. I mean, Beard had those guys riled up. He recruited a lot of those guys, very experienced roster. He got a lot of those guys in the portal. He hit the portal hard. Not a bad loss. And I think, as we move into this LSU game, you know, LSU, one of the worst teams in the conference, but you can make the case they'd be a middling team in some of the other Power Five conferences. And Texas went there and did not look like this team that has been molded together with duct tape and glue from the transfer portal. They looked like a fluid team, especially in that second half. That was one of their best halves all season, up there with the second half against A&M. That was great. And finally, this team may be coming together, and they may be coming together at just the right time.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. It's almost felt like a game where Texas was able to get their frustration of the Ole Miss loss out, and they took LSU behind the barn and took care of business there. It was an absolute beatdown, like you said in the second half. 58 points in a half. That's big time for this team, especially because Texas, they're not the fastest paced team in the country. To drop 58, obviously you're shooting pretty well. Obviously you're rebounding. Obviously, and then they played good D. They only gave up 33 and a half. That's a pretty average half of college basketball. So when your discrepancy is plus 25 and a half, you'll take it in a game. In a half, special. Really exciting to see if you're Texas. Like you said, teams clicking. You had four guys in double figures. You had Pryor at 9, also playing more minutes. So perhaps this is another guy to look to. Maybe not as an offensive option, but if he's not going to be at the top of his scouting report. If you can get a little bit of punch from your 4 to 7 options, you become a completely different team. That kind of changes from the bubble team to, hey, this is a team that going into the tournament or even the SEC tournament, they might be in that 8-9 slot, 7-10 slot, but you can't overlook them because if your 4 through 7 options are producing, especially offensively, you can kind of shift into the next level of a college basketball program.
Yes, Pryor's really stepped up as of late for Texas. We saw against A&M, we saw it against Ole Miss, and we saw it on Saturday's 89-58 victory against the Tigers. 4 out of 5 starters for Texas in double figures. Love to see that. And Caden Shedrick, he might have had his best game of the year. He had 16 and 10 and was a whopping plus 35 on the night. It's a nice, powerful dunk from Shedrick off a Johnson feed as well. So good to see Caden Shedrick get in the box score as much as he did on Saturday. A little bit different outcome on the game against Ole Miss, but love seeing that activity on offense from Shedrick. Um, it seems like, as you both have mentioned, that Ronnie Terry's Texas teams have really clicked at this point in the season. The last 3 years, his first being as interim head coach, and right now, and last year as full-time head coach. What have you guys noticed specifically out of the Longhorns from what you've seen from them this past week and in previous years under Terry that has allowed them to have the success they've had as the second half of the season kind of gets going?
It's a different story for each 3 teams to me. Obviously, 2 years ago was the interim unique situation, thrust into the head coaching role in January or in December. And that Big 12 was obviously fantastic. You had a really experienced, deep team, deepest team Texas has had in quite some time. Not to say that it's easy for anybody to adjust to what had happened, but a really experienced team like that can handle it a little bit better than a youthful team or a team with a lot of new faces. So I think they were well equipped to do so. And quite honestly, they were for sure the best team of the 3 he's had. So in that sense, different. Last year, it felt like between new faces, a lot of new faces, some injuries, first year with Rodney as the full-time guy, it took them a little bit longer to click. And then you saw them down the stretch, maybe middle of February, playing consistently great defense. Dessou, Asmus, like they really got going. Tough way to go out in the tournament to Tennessee, a game with just both teams abysmal shooting. But they played them tight, and that was a really good Tennessee ball club. And then this year, this team also with a lot of new faces, especially for your prominent players. Really, only in the starting lineup, the only one that's back is Shedrick, and Shedrick was pretty banged up last year. And so now it's almost like when Dessou was our freshman year, when he was a freshman and he was banged up and then he got comfortable. I'm not comparing the two different games, but once your big man's a little comfortable, the team kind of comes together a little bit, especially in this transfer portal era. And I think you're starting to see Texas click a little bit as a unit here.
Absolutely. And like you said, the team from our sophomore year when he inherited Beard's team, you know, when you go through, like, it all starts in the off season, right? With any program. When you go through the off season and then a good chunk of the season, I think that went wrong in what, early January of that year? Late December. Like, they were a ways into the season. I believe they had started Big 12 conference play when that went down. And so you already have that built in infrastructure and a built in culture. And like you said, what helps with that is how experienced that team was, fifth year guys, fourth year guys, third year guys. So it was more of a managerial role for Terry. He didn't have to be super involved, but since it's been his imprint and the program made in his image, there have been question marks, but as you said, I can see them coming along now. And I think this coming week is huge. Arkansas is coming off a big emotional win at Rupp Arena, a place where not a lot of teams go and win regardless, especially this year. I think you can catch the Razorbacks in kind of I guess, lack of a better term, a letdown spot, after a huge emotional win like that. I know Coach Cal will be up for this game, but not like returning to his former school. And then a Vanderbilt team that they've beaten some great teams, but they can be had. Drake beat them. Great mid-major school, but a mid-major school beat them by 11. Mississippi State beat them. Mizzou, who Texas beat them. So dangerous team, but they can be had. If they can keep the momentum going here and guys can buy in, and like you said, those secondary scoring options get going, who knows? I wouldn't, if this team's hot and shooting well, I wouldn't want to play them in Nashville at the SEC tournament.
You're right.
100.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
No, I was just gonna say 100%, Ryan. Second a lot of what you just said there, and Texas kind of enters arguably their toughest 2 week stretch of the season with Arkansas and at Vanderbilt this week, and then home against Bama and Kentucky next week. And we thought that this week was going to be a lot easier than it was at the start of the season, or even 2 weeks ago before Vanderbilt kind of went on a little run. But now this matchup against Arkansas tomorrow night, or sorry, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. is going to be a little bit more difficult than people think, even though Arkansas is still without Boogie Fland for the start for the whole year. I mean, they're coming off, you said it, their biggest win of the season. Most experts, players, coaches, they expected what we saw out of Kentucky on Saturday night, the start of the season, and all of a sudden they're back in the picture in the conference, and it is going to be a tough test because most thought this game would be a cakewalk. Arkansas obviously has a little bit of a big three with John L. Davis, the FAU transfer, and the two Kentucky transfers who Coach Cal heavily recruited while he was still there last year, Abdou Thiero and DJ Wagner, who had great nights, by the way, in Lexington on Saturday night. There's still something to deal with, especially on the offensive end. Thiero more in the paint than Wagner, but they are tough to deal with inside. And even someone like Thiero, we saw Texas struggle with Brakefield a little bit in the paint, and we've seen other teams kind of dominate the Longhorns inside. A&M in that first matchup, even Tennessee a little bit at home. So that is something the Longhorns are going to need to contain on Wednesday night. At Thiero is definitely the matchup to watch, whether he'll be matched with Kaluma, Shedrick, Big Z, whoever Texas throws at him is going to need to contain him and need to be disciplined and not let him get to the foul line like he did in Lexington on Saturday night as he had 12 attempts from the field.
I think this is a huge inflection point for both Texas and Arkansas. Starting with the Arkansas side, absolutely right, Will. Boogie Flan goes down, your point guard, arguably your best player. And now you turn to John L. Davis, a guy who's been through the wars And if you watch that game at Kentucky, it looked like not only their best game of the year, but John L. Davis's best game of the year. He looked, I don't know if there was anything to it or he just happened to play his best game, but he looked the most comfortable he's looked. Like he can run the offense like he did at FAU. I don't know if it was tough for him to share with Boogie or it just didn't click till then. But if the Hogs come into Austin playing the way they did in Lexington, this is preseason Arkansas that we're talking about because they have been a team that they have the capability to do it. At least I believe so. They can shoot, but they haven't done so very well. If you have the pick and pop three rolling with Zvonimir Visic, who's statistically their best 3-point shooter, and you have John L. Davis playing the way he did at FAU, and of course you have Thiero and Wagner, who are uber talented, you're a completely different ball club. And now if you're Arkansas, it's getting to the point of the year. It's February. So March is around the corner. It's time to start racking up wins because if the tournament started today, they'd be on the outside looking in. Huge game for them. And then from the Texas side, I call it an inflection point because you've put together two pretty good weeks, and it's time to show people that that's not a mirage. This is what we are moving forward. So a really massive game, and like Ryan said, potential letdown spot for Arkansas coming out for Coach Cal's return to Rupp. You could be riding high off that one win, and you could just drop an egg, lay an egg. If you're Texas, I know we mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Teams sometimes over. There's a lot of really power. Not that Texas is a bad team, but there's more powerful, prominent teams in the SEC right now. If you can catch teams lacking when they come into the Moody Center, not the worst thing in the world to stockpile some nice quad one wins. So we'll see how it looks. I'm really excited for this matchup.
I mean, what worries me is, you mentioned how Davis had one of his best games of the year and looked the most comfortable in Rupp Arena. I mean, if you're calm, cool, and collected in Rupp Arena, you know, with all due respect, I'm not sure if the corral is going to throw you off your game. Love the corral. Show up, guys. Love the corral. It's a little different, But if it's a letdown spot, professional teams have letdown spots. Okay, like my Wizards, last I checked, were up 20 points against the Hornets tonight. What in the world? I know the Hornets aren't great, but still, like professional teams, guys who are, I know these college guys are getting paid, but guys who are getting paid hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars
Right.
have letdown games. It happens at the college level all the time. This is 18 to 22-year-old kids. You don't really know where you're going to get night to night. Basketball is just such a funny game with shooting. Shooting can change the whole game, turnovers, decision making. Uh, Really, the one constant is, can you play defense and can you guard a versatile amount of people? And I think, despite having no Kendall Weaver, because my boy Devon Pryor, if you're listening, Devon, you made me proud. He stepped up, and they have a good perimeter defender now in place of him. Who knows? And you're right. These next 2 weeks, 3 out of 4 home games, they got to catch really, maybe not for the tournament's sake. They got to get one. If they can get the Vanderbilt win on the road, can they catch two teams lacking at the Moody Center? I think so. I think so.
I think so too. And we'll get into predictions soon, but I think they will start their little hot streak on Wednesday night against Arkansas or continue it. Sorry. Arkansas, even without Texas, I think Texas is a more deeper team than Arkansas. Arkansas really only plays 8 guys, three off the bench, and those 3 guys off the bench. Well, Trevor Brazile, he has a larger role for them than the other two Arkansas players who come off the bench for them. But it seems like they really rely heavily on their starting lineup, a little bit similar to Texas, but I think more so than Texas are they dependent on those 2 to 3 guys, as we've mentioned, Davis, Wagner, the Arrow, and company. We have any predictions for Wednesday night's game against Arkansas?
Give me I'm gonna take the horns. I'm gonna take the horns. Reasonably high scoring. They're gonna put us through it. This is not gonna be like LSU. This is not gonna be comfortable. at least I don't think, unless Arkansas has a bad shooting night, I'll say 74-72. Texas does not leave meat and potatoes at the charity stripe late. They hit their free throws.
I know I've been kind of the pessimistic one. I've picked against the Horns a couple times when you guys have picked the Horns, but I'm drinking the orange Kool-Aid on this one. I like Texas to take care of business. I think that Arkansas will play better throughout the rest of the year, and I think inevitably they will make the tournament. But I do like the Horns to grab the W here. I'm gonna go similar to Ryan's on this prediction. I'm gonna go 74-70 Texas. And like you said, we make our free lunch, take advantage of that, and I think the Horns escape with a nice quality 4-point win here at the Moody Center.
Yeah, it's interesting, guys. Arkansas really got hot against Kentucky, putting up 89 points. But the last time they had over 80 points wasn't even in 2025. It was December 30th, 2024, against Oakland, winning 92 to 62. And ever since then, they've really struggled offensively. That being said, I'm with you, Hop. I think it's high scoring. I think Texas reaches 80, and they win on Wednesday, 80 to 73. Moving on.
Real,
Go
no,
ahead, Hop.
so I wanted to say, you said something interesting, Seth. You picked a Texas win, but you said that you think the Razorbacks are going to find their way into the field. With a loss, they would be sitting at 13-9. And I know it's a tough conference and you lost your best player, but 2-7 in conference. So they'd have to get some wins down the stretch or get the auto bid in Nashville. Like I'm almost reconsidering my pick now. Their backs are against the wall.
Well, the
And
beauty of the SEC is every opportunity, almost every game you play is quad one with a few quad two opportunities. So when we're looking at the end of the year, are you going to take the 7-11 SEC Arkansas team that's got six quad one wins? Or are you going to take the 12-6, or maybe not 12, 11-7 ACC team that's played two teams with a pulse all year?
True. Or like, are you going to take revamped Georgetown? Like, probably not. And
No.
from there, like Hoya Paranoia, but like, nah. You're gonna if you want a good field, yeah. But it depends if they think of it like that.
well, for
Yeah.
Texas' sake, I hope the committee thinks like that. That being said, Arkansas, after Texas, they have a gauntlet. They face Alabama on the 8th at home. Then they have a home game against LSU. That's an easier one. But then the next week, they travel to College Station and Auburn.
Man.
And then they come home to Missouri team that's looked great since losing to Texas. So if Arkansas is going to make the tournament, I am going to have to disagree with you, Seth. I do think that they are going to have to beat Texas. Now, it's not obviously a must-win game. Might not even be make or break for their season. That being said, they need this win on Wednesday night just as much as the Longhorns do.
Or they at least need to split because then after that Mizzou game, Texas goes to Fayetteville. And I'm looking at the little schedule thing on ESPN, and they give you the ticket prices for the games that haven't happened yet. And for a lot of their home games, you can get in the door for less than $100 or even less than that. But the Texas game, because we're their Super Bowl, you're getting in the door for $301 in Fayetteville. For a regular season college basketball game, that is unbelievable. But that's when these horns show up, that's what
We're gonna have
happens.
to pay $301 for that. I'll turn that on or another one of the TVs in this place. That's how I'll watch that game.
Yeah, crazy. That's crazy. Well, anyway, yeah, we got to hit Vanderbilt. So
Yeah,
moving on to
Texas
Nashville. Yeah.
Texas faces Arkansas on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. They face Vanderbilt on Saturday at noon. And in Nashville, Seth Berger will be there. Vanderbilt 16-5 overall, but just 4-4 in conference play. We've mentioned it already today, but they have some great wins and some great losses. The last one being to Oklahoma by 30 points this past weekend. Seth Berger, you'll be at the game on Saturday in Nashville, heading there for the weekend. What are your thoughts, expectations for Texas and their matchup against the Vanderbilt Commodores this Saturday?
Kind of like the matchup for Texas. And now we can't talk hypotheticals yet about what kind of team we see coming off Arkansas because that could totally change my thought process. Maybe I won't be drinking the orange Kool-Aid by that point, but I kind of like the way Texas matches up for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is not a big team at all. They're a small team. They're a team that does not shoot the 3-point well, and most importantly, for Texas's sake, they don't defend the 3-point that well. They're averaging opponent's 3-point percentage at 36.6%. That's high. That's really high. And as we know, Texas likes to shoot the three. And when they get going, Texas really can be streaky. And for a team that's playing better basketball right now, already when you lose a tough road game like Ole Miss, the next time you hit the road, that's in your mind. You think about that, you let that seep in. I kind of like Texas to go in there and win this game. Now, Vanderbilt, credit to them. Mark Byington's come in year one and done a bang up job. Stack could never get it going. Staff hires were never that great. Wasn't enough talent. But now with a new influx of talent, you got AJ Hogard. Shout out to Devin McLaughlin transfer. I met his dad at the airport in Atlanta after the SEC championship. Great guy, really nice guy. So pulling for him, pulling for Horns W as well. But a team that's really infused some nice talent, and they've played really good basketball. They're they don't turn the ball over, but they turn you over. Luckily, I kind of like the way Texas match up because Texas doesn't turn the ball over very much. So when you kind of compare this matchup, I kind of like the way that the Horns look in this one.
I couldn't agree more. Not just small. I mean, nobody over 6'8" in the rotation. Nobody over 6'8" who has played a minute of basketball this year. One of their biggest players, 6'7" guard out of Harrisonburg, Virginia, home of the JMU Dukes. He plays a little bit, but they got McLaughlin. First of all, Devin McLaughlin. What a name! I mean that guy you met, just tremendous naming of his son. But Devin McLaughlin, leading rebounder. They got to keep him off the glass. He plays bigger than his 6'7" frame, gets about 8 boards a game, kind of like Kaluma in a way, plays bigger than he is. Not quite the shooter Kaluma is, though. But Jason Edwards is the straw that stirs the drink. When they need a bucket, they get it to Jason Edwards, the North Texas Mean Green transfer of all places, 17 a game. No one else averages more than 11 and a half. Um, I think this is a good matchup. We did say something similar about Ole Miss last week, though, if you'll remember. Oh, they're not that big. Difference is this is less of a veteran team. Great coaching job this year, but not quite facing, Chris Beard in his first year. Um, I think Texas can pull it out. Now, going on the road is tough. Vanderbilt always gets up for basketball. They usually don't have any football to get up for. Um, they got that weird court that looks like a janky high school gym where it's like a
Apparently, it was made to be a theater. I just learned this, so I'll give you the inside scoop after I walk in. But of course, Vanderbilt has to be the one different one of the SEC. Already, as they don't stick out enough.
and I think it's there to be had. Yeah, you can say that this is two Harvards of the South going at it. This is a. Well, what do you think, Will? I think the Horns have a chance. Good chance.
I think the Horns have a great chance. And Ryan, you mentioned two things. One thing Texas needs to do is impose its size and will in this game. You mentioned Vanderbilt's tallest player in the rotation around 6'8", 6'9". So Texas has an advantage inside, which is something they usually don't have. And Cajun Jedrick is coming off his best game of the season last week. Arthur Kaluma has played well since returning from injury against, I believe, that was not A&M, but the game after A&M where he returned from injury and played well. And if Texas can dominate the glass, I think they'll see success in this game. The second thing is stopping Jason Edwards. Jason Edwards is that dude. He's been great for them offensively all year. But you're right. Hop and Seth. Vanderbilt doesn't shoot the three very well, so that's another area where Texas can attack. They can win the rebound matchup inside, the 3-point matchup from the field, and stop Jason Edwards. I expect a Longhorns W in this one. I'm going to say Texas 74, Vanderbilt 65.
You
Hmm.
know, the only thing that scares me about this one is we're it's going to be close to a pick 'em, but Texas is sandwiched in between road trips to Florida, home game against Auburn, and then trips to Tennessee and Kentucky. So, like, if you look at that, it's the by far the most winnable game, and that's not a knock on Texas. It's just a testament to the prowess of those other programs. But like I said, I really do like the Horns this one. It's going to be close to a pick 'em, but I'm going to go 71-70 Texas.
You know, I think I think they can win. I think they will win. But for whatever reason, like y'all have said, going on the road is tough. Usually role players tend to I know it's more of an NBA cliche, but usually role players tend to play better at home. They tend to shoot better at home. Um, at least for me personally, I feel like that gap between the stands and the floor would mess up my depth perception. Like you see this with the Final Four a lot.
It is so different. And they got the benches on the baseline. That is crazy. That's
Yeah,
like,
at least the benches aren't like in the ground like the
yeah,
floor. But
barn,
I
yeah,
don't
Minnesota.
like that, but they're probably used to that from practice. I think this is going to be a mess. I think it's going to be a slugfest. Like you said, they're really good at turning other teams over. Hopefully, Pope and the Texas Ball Hairers can take care of it. I'm going to go 63 to 61 slugfest. No one's hitting shots. Defense.
I like that. So we're all on Texas this week. Memorial Stadium is a tough place to win. Tough place to win, especially this year. They obviously have wins at home against Kentucky and Tennessee, but they do play at Florida in Gainesville tomorrow night. That's going to be a tough one for Vanderbilt. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Will Iger here with Ryan Hopper and Seth Berger. And tune into all our information, podcasts, and play-by-play games throughout the week on the Burn Orange Sports Network. And please subscribe to our YouTube page. Thank you guys all for joining and have a good one.